The memory still haunts them today. German veterans, now in their 90s, describe a sound they'll never forget. Rolling thunder that seemed to come from the earth itself. Shells landing miles behind their lines. Command posts they thought were safe, suddenly obliterated. Roads cratered, bridges destroyed, supply depots turned to rubble. And the worst part? They never even saw the gun that did it. This was late 1944. The Western Front was collapsing. But even battle-hardened Wehrmacht soldiers were stunned by something new, something that rewrote the rules of artillery warfare. The American M40 self-propelled howitzer had arrived. Let me take you back to where this monster was born. Back to 1943, when American engineers faced a critical problem. Their artillery was powerful, yes, but it couldn't keep up with modern warfare. The standard heavy guns, like the towed 155 mm Long Tom, packed a devastating punch. They could throw shells over 14 miles. But moving these beasts was a nightmare. Crews needed trucks, tractors, and hours of setup time. In fast-moving battles, that was a death sentence. The Germans had already proven with Blitzkrieg that speed wins wars. American commanders watched their heavy guns fall behind advancing tank columns. They saw opportunities slip away while artillery struggled to keep pace. Something had to change. General Leslie McNair was furious about this. He believed artillery was the god of war. He demanded American firepower that could move faster and hit harder than anything the enemy expected. The solution started taking shape on factory floors across America. Engineers looked at the reliable Sherman tank chassis, specifically, the widened version built for heavy loads. They realized something revolutionary. This could become the foundation for mobile heavy artillery, not just a big gun bolted to tracks. A complete game changer. The M40 project launched with incredible urgency. Allied leaders knew the invasion of Europe was coming. They needed weapons that could break through Hitler's fortifications, weapons that could shatter supply routes miles behind enemy lines. By late 1943, prototypes were rolling out of Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. Crews immediately saw the difference. The M40 could go from traveling to firing position in minutes. Compare that to over an hour for towed guns. That speed meant survival. Fewer chances of being caught by German counter-battery fire. Artillery crews were dying by the thousands on both sides. The M40 promised to change that deadly equation. But this wasn't just about building another self-propelled gun. The Americans had already deployed vehicles like the M7 Priest with success. The M40 was something bigger, something that would shock the Wehrmacht to its core. Picture the engineering challenge. The M40 was built on the M4A3 Sherman chassis with crucial modifications. Standard Shermans couldn't handle the massive 155 mm gun's weight and recoil. Engineers adapted the heavier M4A3E8 variant. They fitted it with the horizontal Volet spring suspension system. This gave the vehicle better stability and smoother rides across rough terrain. Without this upgrade, firing the gun could have shaken the entire vehicle apart. The centerpiece was the M1 155 mm gun, the same Long Tom that had proven deadly in towed form, but now mounted on tracks with revolutionary results. Instead of being dragged by trucks and taking forever to set up, crews could roll into position instantly, drop the rear spade for recoil support, be ready to fire in minutes. This was artillery revolution in action. The vehicle stretched over 25 feet long with the gun extended. It weighed more than 27 tons. A 5-man crew operated it directly. Each 155 mm shell weighed around 100 pounds. Crews had to be both strong and disciplined. Firing rate was 1 to 2 rounds per minute. Slow compared to smaller guns, but absolutely devastating in effect. Every shot could destroy reinforced positions, blast open concrete bunkers, crater roads to cut German supply lines. This wasn't just firepower. It was battlefield dominance. The design was stripped down to essentials. Unlike tanks, the M40 wasn't heavily armored. Its job wasn't dueling with enemy armor. It was staying behind lines and raining destruction from miles away. Thin armor protected crews from small arms and shrapnel. The open-top design was necessary for ventilation and handling the massive gun. Yes, this made it vulnerable to aircraft and artillery, but mobility compensated perfectly. Fire, then quickly relocate. Avoid being sitting ducks. The Germans had never faced anything like this before. The smartest feature was the rear spade. When lowered into ground, it absorbed recoil from the 150mm gun. Without it, firing would shove the vehicle backward or cause mechanical damage. With it, the M40 could fire accurately even at maximum charge, maintain perfect stability while delivering devastating blows miles away. German gunners were about to learn this the hard way. By summer 1944, production was ramping up fast. The pressed steel car company, already building Sherman tanks, took on M40 production. The rush was so urgent that crews trained with prototypes while waiting for finished vehicles. Around 400 M40s were built before war's end. This might sound modest compared to thousands of Shermans, but heavy self-propelled artillery achieved results far beyond its numbers. Unlike tanks that needed to swarm in large groups, a few M40s could shift entire battles. They smashed key targets at decisive moments. Their psychological impact was even greater than their physical destruction. American artillery battalions equipped with towed long-toms were gradually re-equipped with M40s. This wasn't just swapping guns. It transformed tactics completely. What once required hours of vulnerable setup could now be done in minutes. Crews realized they could keep pace with armored divisions. This was critical as Allies pressed across France toward Germany. The old artillery bottlenecks were disappearing. Breakthrough operations could continue without pause. Field tests in Britain during mid-1944 revealed the M40's incredible potential. Crews practiced rapid displacements and long-range bombardments. The vehicle wasn't perfect. It was heavy, guzzled fuel, and needed constant maintenance. But advantages far outweighed drawbacks. The British were so impressed, they borrowed several units. They later developed their own Cardinal variant after the war. One challenge was ammunition logistics. Each shell weighed 100 pounds. The vehicle couldn't carry enough for prolonged barrages. Engineers solved this by pairing M40 batteries with M30 ammunition carriers. These were modified Sherman chassis designed specifically to haul extra rounds. This teamwork kept guns firing during long operations. The mobile thunder never went silent. German intelligence knew something new was entering the battlefield. Reconnaissance reports noted unusually mobile heavy artillery in Allied columns. But details were scarce. They underestimated what was coming. Germans still believed their concrete fortifications along the Siegfried Line would withstand American guns. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The M40's ability to deliver sustained barrages at long range, then move before counterfire arrived, changed everything. For the first time, German gunners faced American heavy pieces as mobile as their own lighter weapons. The balance of artillery warfare had shifted permanently. By end of 1944, the M40 was ready for its baptism of fire. Now let me take you to that moment. November 1944, somewhere along the Siegfried Line. The thunder begins. American M40s were supporting operations against German positions. Units like the 900th Field Artillery Battalion received the new weapons. Crews didn't need long to see the revolutionary difference. Instead of elaborate setup procedures for towed long toms, they drove the M40 into position, lowered the spade, opened fire within minutes. 150mm shells screamed deep into German territory. German soldiers were stunned. Heavy fire seemed to appear from nowhere. Shells landing miles behind their lines, disrupting reserves and headquarters. Many assumed Americans had simply massed more towed artillery. They had no idea a completely new class of weapon was in play. The Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 became the M40's true test. German forces launched their desperate Ardennes counteroffensive. American units scrambled to hold the line. M40s proved their worth by hammering German troop concentrations and supply routes far behind the front. In one instance, they broke up a German attack before it even reached American positions. Their long-range fires scattered infantry and disrupted armored columns. The shock value was immense. German gunners trained in counter-battery tactics found themselves helpless. By the time they located incoming fire sources, M40s were already gone, relocated to fresh positions miles away. That shoot-and-scoot ability gave American artillery a deadly edge. Germans could no longer trust their rear areas were safe. One story from early 1945 illustrates this perfectly. During fighting near Cologne, M40s supported the advance by blasting fortified German positions across the Rhine's west bank. Engineers clearing obstacles later said German bunkers looked like they'd been struck by bombs, not artillery. That devastation demoralized defenders. Many surrendered rather than face repeated barrages. Germans had their own self-propelled heavy guns like the Hummel, but these were fewer in number and shorter in range. Against the M40, they were completely outclassed. What shocked German troops most was the combination of power and persistence. American batteries could fire for hours thanks to efficient logistics. With ammunition carriers feeding shells, M40s maintained tempo Germans could no longer match. The winter of 1944 brought the Allies face-to-face with Hitler's supposedly impenetrable Siegfried Line. The West Wall bristled with pillboxes, dragon's teeth, and interlocking defenses. Breaking it required overwhelming firepower. Traditional towed artillery could pound fortifications. But setting up so close to the line risked counter-battery fire and air attack. The M40 flipped this calculation completely. Rolling into forward positions, it lobbed 150mm shells directly into German concrete strongpoints, then repositioned before enemies could respond. For defenders who thought their bunkers untouchable, the shock was immediate. Entire pillboxes cracked under repeated direct hits. German machine gunners and anti-tank crews abandoned what they believed were secure shelters. The 921st Field Artillery Battalion used M40s to devastating effect during the Eifel Push in February 1945. American infantry advancing toward Dragon's Teeth paused while M40s unleashed hour-long barrages, tearing open pathways through defenses. German prisoners later admitted they were stunned by how fast Americans could shift heavy guns. Where they expected gaps between barrages, they faced relentless rain of steel. Morale collapsed, along with the concrete. The Siegfried Line had been sold to German troops as near magical protection, something that would halt the Allies cold. But as M40s cracked bunker after bunker, the myth shattered. One officer captured near Aachen confessed his men stopped believing in fortifications. They watched reinforced concrete, destroyed as if it were brick. For the Wehrmacht, this was psychological defeat as much as physical destruction. Even more critical was the effect on German logistics. The M40's long range meant it wasn't just blasting frontline bunkers. It reached deep into supply nodes, artillery batteries, and road networks behind the line. Bridges carrying ammunition trucks became targets. Crossroads where reinforcements gathered came under fire. Depots stockpiling fuel were obliterated. German commanders realized no part of their defense was safe. By March 1945, when American forces prepared to cross the Rhine, the Siegfried Line was a battered shell. What Hitler promised would be an iron wall had been hammered into submission. The M40 played a huge part in this collapse. Speed of American breakthroughs stunned the Germans. What they thought would be months-long battles turned into weeks, thanks to artillery that could match the pace of tanks and infantry. German reaction was tinged with disbelief. Many Wehrmacht veterans had fought through years of artillery duels on the Eastern Front. Soviet guns were feared for their sheer numbers. But what surprised them in the West was mobility of American heavy guns. They weren't just powerful. They were everywhere, showing up where least expected and vanishing before counterfire arrived. That unpredictability shattered German confidence and hastened their collapse along the Western Front. The Siegfried Line was supposed to be Germany's shield. Against the M40's thunder, it became just another obstacle, one the Allies smashed on their way to the heart of the Reich. With fortifications broken, one final barrier remained: the Rhine River itself. March 1945 found Allied forces facing Hitler's last natural shield. The Rhine was wide, fast-flowing, and heavily defended. German commanders believed crossing it would cost the Allies dearly. Once again, the M40 proved them catastrophically wrong. As U.S. forces prepared for Rhine crossings, M40 batteries positioned to deliver massive preparatory barrages. Their job wasn't just softening defenses, it was pulverizing them completely. 155mm shells reached German artillery positions on the far bank, smashed troop concentrations, cratered roads leading to defensive strongpoints. Engineers building pontoon bridges credited M40s with saving lives. German artillery was disrupted before it could zero in on bridging sites. At Remagen, where Allies captured the Ludendorff Bridge intact on March 7th, M40s played a vital role. As Germans frantically tried demolishing the bridge and pouring in reinforcements, American M40s hammered their approach routes. Columns moving at night found themselves under sudden long-range bombardment. Attacks broke up before reaching the riverbank. German efforts to destroy the bridge with artillery fire failed. Counter-battery attempts couldn't keep pace with M40 mobility. By the time German gunners found fire sources, the howitzers were gone. One after-action report described an M40 battalion firing over 1,000 rounds in a single day during Rhine crossing operations. That sustained firepower was impossible with towed long toms. They couldn't maintain pace while relocating. For German defenders, it seemed Americans had endless arsenal constantly pounding from multiple directions. Morale among German troops cratered completely. The Rhine, which they'd been told was the last great bulwark, suddenly seemed porous. Captured soldiers revealed their disbelief. "We expected American tanks, but we did not expect such heavy guns to follow them so fast." That surprise was critical. It made defenders hesitate. Hesitation on battlefields often spells defeat. The psychological effect extended even further. German civilians sheltering in towns along the river described unending thunder unlike anything they'd heard before. Many assumed they were under air attack. Learning later it was artillery alone convinced both soldiers and civilians that American firepower was limitless. By late March, the Rhine had been crossed in multiple places. The road into Germany's heartland lay open. M40s continued rolling forward, supporting armored thrusts into the Ruhr and beyond. For German units, especially exhausted remnants cobbled together, M40 barrages meant battles were lost before they began. They could neither hide nor prepare. destruction arrived from miles away, faster than they could react. The Rhine crossings symbolized final collapse of German defenses. Behind the tanks, engineers, and infantry, the M40 thundered relentlessly, making sure every inch of progress was carved into enemy defenses with steel and fire. As war drew to a close in spring 1945, the M40 had carved out its fearsome reputation. To American crews, it was a hard-working brute, loud, temperamental, demanding constant maintenance, but one that delivered unmatched results when it mattered most. To German soldiers and officers, it was something else entirely. A weapon that shattered their expectations of American artillery capability. Captured diaries and interrogations reveal a striking theme. Many German POWs described being shocked at how quickly Americans could bring heavy guns into play. One officer wrote, "The great guns came as if from the air, firing from places we thought impossible." This unpredictability shattered morale. For soldiers who survived years of artillery duels on the Eastern Front, it was unsettling to find themselves stunned by American fire speed and persistence. The M40's legacy didn't end with Germany's surrender. It rolled almost seamlessly into the Korean War. The same qualities that stunned the Wehrmacht proved devastating against Chinese and North Korean forces. Its long reach was ideal in mountainous terrain, its mobility essential in war where front lines shifted constantly. Crews in Korea nicknamed it the Long Tom on Tracks, a badge of honor linking it back to World War II roots. But perhaps the most telling legacy was psychological. German engineers had designed excellent artillery pieces, but wartime industry couldn't build enough mobile platforms to make real difference. The Allies, by contrast, harnessed industrial might to turn out machines like the M40, proving that numbers and mobility were just as decisive as quality alone. In many ways, the M40 symbolized the larger war story. The Reich relied on static defenses and tradition. America pushed innovation backed by production lines that never seemed to end. Post-war analysis confirmed its battlefield impact. U.S. Army artillery reports emphasized how the M40 changed operational pace. Instead of artillery slowing down offensives, it kept up with tanks and infantry. Breakthroughs could be exploited without pause. The M40 was a forerunner of Cold War doctrines emphasizing mobility, rapid deployment, and constant enemy pressure. For Germans who faced it, the memory remains unforgettable. Many described the sound of its firing as rolling thunder, heavier and deeper than smaller field guns they knew. Others remembered the devastation it caused: bunkers cracked open, supply lines obliterated, bridges collapsing under direct hits. To them, it wasn't just another American weapon. It was a signal that the war's tide had turned irreversibly. The M40 didn't win the war alone. No single weapon did. But it embodied the combination of engineering, firepower, and mobility that defined the American way of war in 1944-45. It was a gun that stunned enemies not only with shells, but with its very existence. For those who lived through its barrages, that thunder rolling across the battlefield created memories they would never forget. Today, as the last Wehrmacht veterans reach their final years, they still speak of that sound. That deep, rolling thunder that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The sound of American industrial might unleashed on the battlefield. The sound of the M40. The gun that stunned the Wehrmacht and helped thunder the Third Reich into defeat.